Okay, this is part 2. I accidentally finished the video, but this is part 2, so it's okay. Okay, now we are going to Grand Reef for a second to do magic. Now, guys, here we are. We're in Grand Reef. We need to be level 40 to get here. Now, take your Zeus heart. If you don't know where, talk to the pirate, find all the levels in the Forsaken Shores and go inside, put the TNT here and explode it, and you find for a heart. Swim, go, if you're on land, go anywhere, follow the path and find the heart. It's that easy. Now we are going to go to Atlantis. The use of heart is the most important thing to go to Atlantis. This is what it works. Now, come here. Over here. Bang. Okay, now you say follow the right thing. Go here again. Press it. Wait, press. Wait for a while and just wait. Okay, first. Wait, okay, we are here. Now, the first thing we need to go here. You need to find 10, like 5 clocks. You need to take one picture of this. Now you just take one picture of this like this. Okay. Now you just follow me where I go. Okay, we are here, right? Turn to the left and go straight, and turn to the right, and turn to the right again, turn to the left, and you see the one door on the left. Do like this. Take a screenshot. Yeah. Take one picture of this. Okay, one here. You can just memorize here, where this. Okay. Now you follow me where I go. You remember. Left. Here on the right. Now you just follow me where I go. Now we are here. Now I need to place some more here. Wait for a while.
What prevents shopping for a declaratory judgment on the opposite of the country being sanctioned by the administration, and that judge ruling that there is no such injunction, ruling the opposite and creating a constitutional challenge as we currently have.
Well, put your finger on the ingredient.
Okay. Now we go to photos and brooms. Recent. Okay, here. It's very hard to find. Okay, one is here. Another one is here. This one is here. Another one is here and this. Okay, after this, the one door is open. Now my battery. Now you still got one clock. I'm already done with this, so I will tell you what is it. You see the left and right and got one button. Press the button to the blue thing here and press the middle button there. After this, you are done with the first one. Cause some more. Nearby empty spot also I got it. You want to look at the stats. Just look. Not here. Okay, the world speed is 90 watt 120. Control 0.15. Whereas revisions 40. Max kg, I think it's 80,000 kg. Okay, after that, follow me.
The first time in American history, senators and opposing political party voted to make president, but officially appointed president. I want to talk to you about crazy news in this after you called the judicial coup.
Wait,
Am I right? That's correct. Okay. And you would describe 14 federal judges appointed by the president of an opposing political party.
Wait, I'm going to go somewhere. I'm going to bring my phone also so you can see
I would describe
what I'm even doing.
decisions in the last 7 weeks, deliberately designed to slow down the moving and block. Sure.
Sorry about that. My charger is 2%, so I need to wash.
How many of them
Okay,
were appointed by Republican presidents? Do you
now
100%, all of them.
did nothing to do.
I'm making your case. What's fascinating,
This.
Mr. Gingrich, is I didn't hear much from you about judicial coup d'etats when President Biden's policies were being rejected by federal judges across the country. It is very convenient now.
Swim here.
Behold, that you take
It's very nice, right?
and you describe it as a judicial coup d'etat.
Just
I
don't
didn't hear
go
these words 2 years ago.
anywhere, you will die. Now you can't go behind here. You need to go to the black thing here. If you fail, kraken hands will just kill you. Understand that? And then come here. After that,
Subject to nationwide injunction
Come
across
here.
the land. Apparently, you were just waiting.
No.
Come testify in front of the committee to call that a judicial coup d'etat against President Biden. That's what it sounds like.
That's why I believe any kind of nationwide injunction should immediately go to the Supreme
this
Court.
one you need 2% to do it, you know.
Well,
I don't believe district judges.
I understand
This is very hard, you need to do it in time.
that you've provided that
Here.
particular alternative as something for this
This
committee to
one.
consider. Your written testimony indicates far
If people done it,
significant and
Biwo got one set, say I did it. Only one cookie, another person needs to go to button. After that, go here.
Seem to be suggesting those as remedies that we ought to consider. In any event,
This is the one cock.
I know
Where's
I'll ask the chairman to indulge me.
this moon here.
Other members. You
Remember this one, but I don't have because I just wasted on this one.
really starting in the late 1850s.
So sorry.
This idea
Next
that lawyers and
update
judges
I'll buy it,
the
okay?
rest of us, and they get to define everything, right?
That's correct.
And you're referencing what case?
Cooper versus Aaron.
Cooper versus Aaron. That case was the desegregation case, right?
Yeah, but that wasn't the point of
I
it.
understand, but
This
a
quest is very fun,
in which
promise
the state
me.
of Arkansas was seeking the ability to not comply with Brown versus Board of Education in desegregating schools in Arkansas. It had nothing to do, by the way, Speaker Gingrich, with presidential power.
Okay, this is Squid Game. In fish, I don't know why they put Squid Game. Go here.
The Supreme Court's interpretation of the Constitution. There are a variety of
Okay,
cases
you still.
long before Cooper.
After you do this, go one password here and one password here. Here you're supposed to go first here, you need to go the second. After this, put your code here.
1950s desegregation cases is the
Kita.
inception, in your view, of the Supreme Court's tyranny.
Put your code here and done. You can open.
That's consistent
This one is very
with the values of the
not
American people. It's the reason
cheap.
why
Now, here,
Republican
I'm
jurists,
confused.
Michael
You need to
Casey,
go to
very
the.
distinguished federal jurist, as
I-
you know, has
If
attacked your
if I get it wrong, I'm so sorry. So I
If I can give indulgence, I
go
would
to
serve
the
as
All I would say is, reference to that. is from the book
Great
by a
Dreamer, I
liberal
think.
lawyer, who is Supreme Court of Arkansas.
After this, I think if I get it wrong, I'll be very sorry. But I think it's the hammer, not the Great Dreamer.
Because he did not believe judges in the
After
ability to
this,
overrule the American people.
you unlocked the
Thank you, gentlemen.
kraken.
We now go to the
Just follow me.
story. I think my colleague from California, Ms. Romero, you have testified about your experience in Aurora, Colorado. As we talked about at the
Anyone want
beginning,
it?
I came to Aurora and visited with you and others that were impacted by what you were dealing with. To be clear, you felt terrorized in your home, in your apartment. You have an order, Mr. Chairman, please.
Okay, after this,
If you have conversations,
Yeah.
please take them off the desk.
see you already unlocked it, right?
With all respect to my colleagues, and I noticed Ms. Romero.
But one more clock here.
We're talking about people's lives.
Put it to
Ms.
the.
Romero, your life. True. Yes or no?
I think
Short
it's
answer. Was your life turned upside down?
moon here,
by
and I will unlock.
in
You
your
need to
home,
follow
in your
me.
apartment complex in Aurora, Colorado.
Absolutely, and continues to be.
And people were in danger. American citizens, Americans were in danger.
Is it Kraken school? We are here.
I couldn't get my grandchildren even to visit. It was dangerous over there. The police didn't want to respond. The local government in Aurora did not
That's
want
right.
to acknowledge.
The
There was
fish.
continued pushback and gaslighting.
And I mentioned earlier when I opened up this, the extent to which we had a young woman here who was testifying last
Why
year
Red
in this
Chris
case,
is here?
Alexis Hunter, whose daughter Jocelyn was murdered in the hands of Sunday and Iowa members in Houston, Texas. Is that acceptable?
It's absolutely not acceptable.
And so let me ask you this. Should TDA gang members or MS-13 gang members be removed and deported from the United States of America? Let me first ask Ms. Shaw, Professor Shaw. Should they be removed?
The president certainly has the authority to make that determination. The question is, how do we know who is a
Should they
member
be-
of these families?
So these members should be removed. These TDA gang members and MS-13 gang members, you're opposing
Yo.
American
Okay,
people,
okay.
citizens should be removed from the United States of America.
I am a scholar. I'm not going to take a policy position on how immigration should be. I should
But
be
you comment on these
carried
issues
out.
all the time.
I opine on the law, and the president has certain authority, significant authority, to enforce the immigration laws, but the Constitution is supreme.
The
Okay,
president
here.
has significant
Let's
authority as the commander-in-chief to protect the United States.
Of course.
Ms. Romero, do you think these TDA gang members and
I don't know what's
MS-13
this.
gang members and other dangerous individuals should be removed
So-
from the United States so they do not pose a harm to American
I'm
citizens?
going to
Every
look
last
at
one of them.
Kraken.
And given that,
Where is
do
it?
you believe it was appropriate for the president to remove those that were
it-
removed that Judge Boasberg decided to, from his perch in the
Over
district
here.
court in the District of Columbia, stop or attempt to stop a plane leaving Harlingen, Texas, to remove said individuals because this judge in D.C. decided to assert that he had jurisdiction over that plane that the commander-in-chief was using to remove
This,
these
all-
dangerous individuals from our
This
country.
supposed to be
The president was right
something.
or the judge was right?
And
The president was
this
absolutely
someone
right.
gave
If you
me
can describe
supposed to
them
be a
as
secret, but
illegal,
it's so stick.
then you reach the
So
spectrum all at the same time.
nah,
Much as
I will
many
try
of this
to
individual's
get a
American,
kraken.
to be clear,
I'm just
this
waiting
individual,
here.
by all accounts, was a member
I will
of the
show you where to. Now I'll show you
This individual
how
was affiliated
to
with MS-13, had an order of removal
get
against
to the
him
depths.
illegally in the United States of America, and was
I can do it here.
a separate, by the way, the
but I can't do it for next update for. So I'm just waiting here. Going to buy some sundown totems. Okay, our friends, we are in Westwood here.
That having the ability to say that
Okay.
not have a nationwide injunction in the hands of one judge, but then have a process by which you
Now.
can have a nationwide injunction, either through a three-judge panel
Sorry.
or fast track to the court. Clarify for the record, we're saying that's not a partisan exercise. That we're saying that no one judge should make that.
Oh
that there
my
should be a
God.
process. There are times when a nationwide injunction does need to occur to stop administrators from making law. The gentleman's time is expired. Q&A answer.
Whether it was a liberal or conservative, whether it's a Democrat, the very concept of the distribution of power in the American system would indicate that no single person could have
That's
the power
fine.
to dictate
I'll
the
go
entire country what they personally happen to believe that means. And I think that we need to demystify the process.
Okay, you know what the animal pool I will go and bring you there? I just don't need to mind about the kraken. I need to go buy some sandal totems.
You can't put up our country. So you've got to have a system that's now being exploited by the personality or the idiosyncrasies of one person imposing 335 million people. And I think that what Trevor Heisel brought out is a very useful first step. As I said earlier, I think this is the key message. He took the right step, but I think millions of people arrogate to themselves being alternative presidents and impose their personal will on the entire country.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Generally, from correctly 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Given that Mr. Roy went over by almost 2 minutes, I would like to give the ranking member a minute before I begin.
The gentleman.
Sorry, I'm not doing something.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you, the gentleman from Vermont. First of all, I want to align myself with members on both sides who found your testimony, Mr. Merrick, very and very disturbing. And we all agree that gang members.
Okay, don't be randomized carrying a whole gang of your server to find it. It's actually here.
For a mass roundup and deportation of
You
people
see this hole?
who've never been charged
Go
with
down here.
anything,
Here, there is it. I'm going to buy like 40
and the
of them.
administration at least was willing to come forward to say, okay, they have the wrong person. This was a mistake to have him, but now, I suppose, he's stuck in El Salvador under a dictator who throws people into a prison that engages in torture. And my colleagues would rather go all the way down to the
Here is my sundown totems.
rather than admit that that is a blatant violation of American due process and all of our constitutional values. And it's just extraordinary to me that members of the House of Immigration would be taking that position. That's a very serious problem. Now, Judge Boasberg, who's a conservative judge, was appointed to the bench by President Bush, correctly determined that the Alien Enemy Act of 1798 doesn't apply. It had only been used before in that original Alien Sedition Act period, World War I and World War II. It is for wartime. It is for the deporting of foreign nationals who belong to enemy states, or if there's a military invasion of the country. And it doesn't apply, so he said, we've got to use the Immigration Naturalization Act, but that requires a due process hearing. So that's too much for my colleagues, who can evince no sympathy at all for this father of a 5-year-old with autism who has been sent to another country.
Yeah, that was spam sundown totems here.
He has no criminal record. He's not been convicted of anything. And suddenly they're saying, oh, he's a member of MS-13 and it's fine.
Nah, who told you?
He originally came to America and the court determined whether his application for asylum was denied or nonetheless he's established past persecution based on a protected ground, and he has established the presumption of a well-founded fear of future persecution. Maybe that's not something about the case, but that's why I believe the due process
process because I think the court should be doing this. I thank the gentlelady for her indulgence and her time.
Absolutely, and thank you, Mr. Chair. Witnesses today that because President Trump eked out a narrow winning, he should have the right to do whatever he wants. And I find this deeply disturbing. As a former civics teacher, it feels like we failed somewhere along the way. Presumably, we've all had some basic civics education, and I'm very shocked at misunderstanding of how the Constitution works. Professor Shaw, thanks so much for
Yay!
Let's
So yeah.
fundamentals here. We have three branches of government, correct? Correct. Executive, legislative, and judicial branch, correct? Correct. And under our constitutional order, the head of the executive branch, the president, generally is is through impeachment or removal from office for violating law or other egregious behavior. Is that correct? Thank you. But Congress does not remove judges because of a disagreement with how they rule. Is that correct? And why is that?
Judges are constantly afraid that they will be removed from office if they issue a decision that's unpopular or is opposed to the interests of judicial independence requires judges to be confident and secure in their rulings and not fear the consequences of those rulings other than reversal on appeal. That's the concept of judges managed to fear
And as you've said, this has a chilling effect. This entire presidency so far is about having a chilling effect on the way that government works. The House must not take up impeachment resolutions based on anything but serious misconduct or illegal behavior. Yet Republicans, including people on this committee who claim to respect the Constitution, have introduced impeachment resolutions against judges because they don't like how judges did their job. They've introduced 7 impeachment resolutions so far.
I'm going to stop the video for a while to spare my thunder thought. Oh my god, Sylvia! Can you wait for a while? Oh my god.
Does a weakened judiciary,
Yeah.
Professor Shaw, endanger Americans' constitutional rights?
The courts are equally here.
The gentlelady's time is expired, but I will give indulgence from the answer.
Oh my god.
Sorry. I think that an independent judiciary has to be here for all rights, and certainly private judicial independence is a threat to all of us.
Thank you, Ms. Shaw. And I will just say, I've taught my students for years the Constitution requires that we respect the rule of law and not the rule of one man. Thank you so much for being here.
Democrats love to talk about democracy. They think Donald Trump did refer to these actions taken by the administration undermining what, let's be clear, Democrats
Sorry about that.
democracy is nothing more than a partisan talking point. So let me tell you what democracy is not. Democracy is not the tyranny of the majority. When 77 million Americans cast their vote for a president, when every major swing state breaks in his favor, and when the Electoral College delivers a clear mandate, it is not democracy. When a district court privilege overturns the will of the American people and usurps the constitutional authority of the commander-in-chief, full stop.
Okay, now I'm going to watch. I wish I didn't get Sylvia, so it's my time. Oh yeah!
We've seen historic progress on border enforcement, gun rates are down, arrests are up, and deportations are finally happening. But now we're beginning to see that progress stall. Why? Because the tyranny of the minority, activist judges targeting immigration executive orders. It is not the rule nor is the authority of a single judge to undermine the commander-in-chief's constitutional responsibility to repeal an invasion. Make no mistake about it, this is an invasion. 20 million people entering our country illegally for the past 4 years is in fact the traditional definition of an invasion. It's such the border crisis, we are fighting cartels like Trinidad and MS-13. You see, groups like these, in coordination with the Chinese Communist Party, are flooding our country with fentanyl. And it's not just a crisis here on drugs; it is chemical warfare. Fentanyl is not a simple drug; it's also poison. My conversations.
Okay, then my first time getting a Syria.
Absolutely no confusion about what's happening.
So I hope I better get it. If not, I will just get the kraken then.
Kill the gringo. That's the reality. And President Trump is using.
But my name is Wolfie Bo Godry or Declan 93000. That's my real name, but for no numbers.
We really appreciate your testimony earlier. You went as far as saying publicly that in Kamala Harris's America,
Oh my God, see the Syria.
and every community is under threat. You also said after Trinidad Water invaded your apartment complex, you reached out to local media and several NGOs in your community begging for help. And you were turned away because there were no government programs that grant citizens protected status. A question for you. Do you feel more or less safe now that President Trump is back in the White House?
Okay.
And why do you say that?
Back.
Do you think our President Trump is putting the priorities of the average American citizen above the priorities of the cartels and those people that want to destroy the nation?
Yes, because these people were causing immediate harm to citizens, not some imaginary harm that couldn't happen today.
If you had a message for the American people today, what would it be?
Not just mine, not an isolated incident, not just regulated to one building. These are all over the United States. There are dangerous criminals in our country. And if we don't start getting them brought down, then they can rise just like me.
I fought for this country. There are many people. It's really not fought for this country.
What is a small guy? Last time I beat you, you're a very big guy. So small now. What the loser.
That's what we took an oath to do. And sitting here in the halls of Congress, it is also our responsibility to protect the American citizen first. For the record, as someone has deployed all over this world, no
I'll try
other
to get
country operates
space.
like this. No. You cannot tell me a country that wants to enter their country legally and their country do absolutely nothing about it. For the record, it's the greatest country in the world. That's why there's 20 million people trying to enter it illegally. So therefore, we bear an even greater responsibility to keep these animals from entering our country to protect you, the American public. That's our job. President Trump won, and he was given a mandate for that very reason. He promised to protect us and put our priorities first. It is just that simple. I understand why colleagues on the left may disagree with this to a certain extent. But quite frankly, the mandate was already given to us, and we're sitting here right now because we're terrorized by the very animals that had no business being in our country in the first place. I'll let you answer this last question, ma'am. As we move forward, what would you like us to do to protect you?
Oh my God, Syria.
What he's doing, do something to protect the people who elected you and put you in your spots. To look down and decide what happens to the rest of us.
Thank you, ma'am. Are you back ready to do our time?
Beta?
Young lady from North Carolina withdraws.
Thank my question.
Oh, good.
Donald Trump's
Okay.
contempt for the judiciary is not new. He has fought civil cases against him because of real estate deals and people he hasn't paid.
Bonus.
He's fought victims that he has sexually assaulted and he has been convicted of sexually assaulting. His disrespect for the judiciary is based on his disrespect for anybody who doesn't let him do whatever he wants, whenever he wants. And he is very dangerous right now because he is the President of the United States of America. And we are seeing him treat the people of the United States of America the same way he treated those poor contractors he never paid. The same way he treated women whom he sexually assaulted. he is doing the same thing to the United States. So Professor Shaw, on February 9th, Donald Trump told
in front of him.
that no judge, quote, should be allowed to rule against his
Here.
administration's unconstitutional changes to how our government operates. And the next day, Vice President J.D. Vance posted on X, judges aren't allowed to control the executive branch's legitimate power. Just to be clear, does the president decide what issues judges
Oh my god, a megalodon spit.
under our Constitution?
Really since Marbury versus Madison 1803, judges and the Supreme Court, right, sitting at the top of the federal judiciary, have had the final word on believing the Constitution and the laws and the consistency of laws for executive action in the Constitution. So in our system, it has been the courts and not the president who has had the final word.
Thank you for that. So I am going to quote Fourth Circuit Judge Michael Lewis, who I can testify, no liberal. I had a case in front of him. He was a top customer in the Fourth Circuit. He was appointed by George H.W. Bush, and he recently noted in an op-ed for the New York Times, quote, "A country without an independent judiciary is not one in which any of us should want to live, except perhaps Mr. Trump while he resides in the White House." Trump has railed against the federal judiciary for years, as I said in my opening, and especially now that his administration is losing in court
I
station.
see you.
So, Professor Shaw, what could Congress do to stand up against Trump's attacks on the judiciary to ensure that we're functioning, independent, and complete in our system of governance?
Well, I certainly don't think resolutions
very scary.
for no other reason than rulings that members disagree with are constructive from the perspective of preserving judicial independence. I mean, one thing that I would imagine that bipartisan support could easily rally behind is judicial security. Like hearing more from the Marshal Service concern about heightened levels of threats to federal judges. When there was an actual threat against Justice Kavanaugh in 2022 on a bipartisan basis, security for Supreme Court justices does increase. But I'm not sure that we've seen anything to that effect now. So shoring up judicial independence at a moment where, frankly, there are not a lot of other functioning checks on the executive branch is, in my mind, critically important. And maybe that's one way this body could devote itself to doing that.
And then going back to the impeachment issue that my colleague from Vermont discussed, if Trump is successful in getting judges impeached in the House, I don't think he would be successful with the final decision in the Senate. Is he allowed to demand that a judicial nominee promise not to rule against him or his administration if he, under his appointment power?
There's nothing in the Constitution to speak to that one way or another, but it is certainly a very established tradition, bipartisan and long-standing. Presidents do not secure commitments, in particular with respect to the rulings from nominees.
What's even this?
Certainly the Senate, in its advice and consent role, can seek to enforce that long-standing principle by asking nominees if they have been asked or have given any kinds of assurances, but it would be wildly inconsistent with our practice for a president to seek such assurance from a nominee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
With that.
Generally, you get back. Does the ranking member have to ask consent first?
I don't need this.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. This is from March 31, 2025. The makeup artist that Donald Trump supported under the Alien Enemies Act.
Without objection, so ordered. The gentleman from Texas, Mr. Good.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Shaw, earlier you said that you worried that some of the intent of these actions will have a chilling effect to disincentivize to take on clients. And that the legal system requires lawyers to take on unpopular clients. Would you expand on that, please?
Nah, so wrong.
Lawyers, the idea that even individuals charged with crimes
are entitled to counsel and to vigorous representation in their defense, regardless of what they may have done, is actually a core kind of belief pillar of our legal system. And so that's one example. Individuals, even charged with serious crimes, have a right to counsel.
So I guess one of the things that I struggle with is the 2020 election. One of the groups that comes to mind is the 65 Project, which is a legal activism campaign seeking to disbar and discredit Trump-affiliated lawyers who worked on lawsuits during Trump's attempts to question the 2020 election. They're a dark money group, and I don't recall my colleagues or you speaking out against this. And in fact, there were attorneys that were disbarred for representing their client. And sure, there's folks in this room who didn't agree with them. But one of the things you said during that time is, quote, there need to be serious social, professional, and reputational
This is so long.
sanctions if we want to distance
Yeah, I'm
them
going to take like an hour.
And I think this kind of conduct is perhaps taking on a client that supports a belief that maybe is not popular. And I really hope that we'll get away from this lawfare. And that's something that was prevalent over the last 4 years throughout this campaign, and now we're seeing it from this judiciary. And I'm disappointed in this judge, but I am happy we're having this discussion. I'll yield the balance of my time to Chairman Joy.
Oh, I think it's for yielding. Some of the previous speakers on the other side have said, members on the other side have said, attacks by President Trump, I think I got this right, attacks by President Trump on the judiciary are dangerous. They said criticism of judges weakens the judiciary. Mr. Martin, have Democrats ever criticized the judiciary?
Yes, sir.
Can you give me an example that maybe comes to mind? I mean, I have several, but I don't know what's one that comes to mind for you.
Well, I guess the best example of recently was the Supreme Court's decision in Dobbs to overturn Roe v. Wade.
Yeah, where like hundreds of churches and pro-life centers were attacked and firebombed, and all kinds of criticism coming from people that. How about this one? How about the minority leader in the Senate said, I want to tell you, Gorsuch, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you've released the world and you will pay the price. How about that? Remember that one, Speaker Gingrich from Senator Schumer?
Well,
Oh
I
my
think it's
god.
fair to say that the
But it was so
passion
long.
of the left, when the court does the wrong thing, probably is more professionally organized than any passion on the right. And look, I mean, Franklin Roosevelt tried to pack the court. He was a Democrat. There's a long tradition in America that we're allowed to argue. The courts they're not simple.
Whoa.
It's a very religious judicial system. It's a
Only for
secular
one day can rest.
Yeah, fair enough. And look, we're going to criticize the system a lot.
Okay, let's try this one. A second,
All time
maybe.
to criticize the courts, criticize decisions. We're allowed to do that in this country. That's the way it works. Professor Shaw, do you think it was appropriate for what Mr. Schumer, Senator Schumer, said on the steps of the Supreme Court when he said you will pay the price, referencing sitting members in the United States Supreme Court?
I think he should have phrased it differently. I'm sure he feels the same way.
What about the Dobbs leak? What do you think about that and some of the comments that were made after that decision was leaked? Think that was good?
You know, I'm not sure what comments you're talking about. That there were very, very sharp criticism of Justice Alito's opinion in Dobbs. I think that's perfectly healthy, yes.
I think we had a member said that there should be impeachment for the decisions that happened. After the Dobbs decision, there should be impeachment of one of the Supreme Court justices. A member of Congress said that. I think that's appropriate.
You know, impeachment rhetoric is something that we have seen from time to time. I guess I'm not categorically opposed to talking about it. I think introducing resolutions, as we've seen, has been a significant escalation. And of course, it would depend on why. I mean, I think there was serious discussion of impeachment of several sitting Supreme Court justices over ethics matters in the last few years. I don't think there's anything unhealthy about those discussions.
It's okay to talk about impeaching Supreme Court justices. It's okay to add 4 associate justices to the Supreme Court. You had no problems with the comments made after the Dobbs leak. Is that your testimony?
You know, I'm sorry, I'm not sure what specific comments you're talking about, but criticism of the substance of the Dobbs ruling, I have no problem with that.
Okay. You got
The witnesses are very kind, and there are more people that want that kindness. Committee will come to order. We now recognize the gentlelady from California for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Ranking Member. You know, the student tours have started back up here in the Capitol. When I was walking through the rotunda, I walked past a group of young kids from Ohio, and the kids were listening to their teacher talk about George Washington, and then I heard the teacher say that this is where we have all of our checks and balances. And I remember thinking to myself, well, only for a few months more. And you talk about banning books. I was like, well, we might have to ban all of the books that talk about checks and balances because we won't have any at the rate this committee is going. So in fourth grade, children are learning about the three branches of government, the checks and balances of power between the different branches, the co-equal partnership between the executive and legislative, the independence of the judiciary. Not a new phenomenon. Article 3 judges were established 236 years ago in the Constitution with the lifetime tenure. And we could go back, and I've heard it in this committee, and talk about Marbury versus Madison, Plessy versus Ferguson, Dred Scott, but more recent is where I want to land. And I think the chair is also bringing up some of these rulings. We've had Bush v. Gore, we've had Citizens United, we've had Hobby Lobby, we've had Masterpiece Cake Shop, we've had the overturning of Roe v. Wade. And yes, all major wins hailed by the right. And in the aftermath of these rulings, even with the passion of the left, Mr. Speaker, the judicial institutions remained intact, and bench officers were not excoriated or physically threatened. In fact, one U.S. district judge, her son was killed. But now we have an administration aggressively and unapologetically pushing the boundaries of what is constitutional and erasing the checks and balances of power by going after judges who do not side with Trump. To the point that even Justice Roberts of Republican lore says it is inappropriate to impeach judges. And after all, he is part of the ultimate arbiter in this arena, which favors the Republican Party with a 6-3 majority. So I'm asking myself, what is really going on? What is going on is we are setting a dangerous precedent by replacing judicial independence with judicial fealty. Because if judges feel like they must follow a partisan ideology rather than independently interpret the law, then we, as lawmakers, are a shill in this charade. We do not make laws for ourselves to interpret. We make laws for judges to interpret and impose punishment to those who don't follow them. And what is sad is that all these decisions that Trump doesn't like are still appealable. So once again, what is going on? What is going on is, instead of being a party that supports smaller government, Republicans are creating a far-reaching leviathan, an insatiable, chaotic monster of power. And once that locomotive starts going, you cannot put the brakes on. This judicial independence, checks and balances have withstood 118 Congresses and 46 presidencies. And somehow today, we are supposed to get some where we have to blow this thing up. And it makes me think about March Madness, which is happening right now. Kids are playing their hearts out. They are trying to win. And
our kraken!
Not all calls are perfect, but they are still respected. No one says, I didn't like that call.
Yes,
go after the referee, go after the system. And in fact, organized sports, the most classless and unpalatable thing you can do is blame your loss on the referee. Or they blame the umpire.
Oh my God.
Or cheat. And 5-10 years ago, we saw these parents attending these little league games, and then violence was being committed. People were running onto the field, attacking and assaulting the referees, and it was distasteful. And now we are here with this court doing the same thing. The games do not work without officials, and our system of justice does not work without judicial officials. And Justice Roberts says, all we do is call balls and strikes. Judges, like referees, are a neutral party. You don't always like what they say, you might not always agree with their calls, but you have to respect the institution and the officials. And if you take away the one element that brings integrity with it, then the competition itself has no integrity. And then you have to ask the question, why do we even take an oath? Why do we even obey any of these laws? And what we have right now with this hearing, with Trump's attack of the bench officers, with the threat to impeach judges, is the equivalent of parents rushing onto the field and trying to punch a judge in the face. It is disrespectful,
It is unseemly, it is unprecedented, and it is a disgrace. And with that, I yield back.
I thank the gentlelady, the honorable gentleman from California, for his 5 minutes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In our state of California, we have a governor who routinely attacks judges when he doesn't get his way, often in very harsh terms. This being Governor Newsom, of course. After one ruling related to the Second Amendment, Newsom threw a veritable temper tantrum, calling a special press conference to lambaste the judge, calling him an extremist, a stone-cold ideologue, a wholly funded subsidiary of the NRA, and saying, quote, "We need to call this federal judge out. He will continue to do damage, mark my words." So it is curious hearing some of the comments about the appropriate relationship between the different branches of our government and the appropriate way to opine on judicial proceedings. With that in view, and we've also, of course, seen examples brought up by Chairman Jordan related to Chuck Schumer's comments on the steps of the Supreme Court that were rebuked by Chief Justice Roberts himself. So there certainly is, I think it's appropriate as elected officials for us to express views on opinions of the judiciary, but the idea that one side has crossed the line but the other has not simply is not borne by the evidence. Now, the question before us today is related to this issue of checks and balances, because I think we've reached a point where balances have gotten a bit out of whack. Really on the minds of the founders related to the idea of nationwide that didn't exist in the early years of the Republic, or really not until modern times. And given the growth of the federal judiciary, such that now you have not just an issue of the judiciary impeding the president or impeding Congress, but rather you have the ability of any individual judge to do so. The governor's open immediate policy could face the law straight to parlay the 94-0 win in the district courts into a 12-0 victory in the courts of appeal. So what these nationwide injunctions have effectively done is not just shifted power from one branch to another, but empowered the most extreme people within the judicial branch by saying that we're going to have one judge who can be essentially picked by the plaintiffs the ability
Foster got no time.
put a policy on hold, and what this creates is a sense of stasis, not a sense of frustration. And you see this during Republican and presidential administrations, that the levers that we have to really our citizenry exercise its will are getting increasingly difficult to pull. You know, we have increasing hurdles to legislation, the ability to get a filibuster in the Senate to change policy that way. And then even when the president is exercising his duly granted authority, we have these nationwide injunctions that are putting the president's agenda into stasis. And so I do think there is an appropriate opportunity here to see if we need to recalibrate the way checks and balances are functioning. And I think that on top of that, it's a matter for the judiciary itself. Because the way our system generally works is you have different forums, you have different cases addressing similar issues, involving different fact patterns, you develop a factual record, you have different judges that provide different sort of analysis, and then to the extent that they conflict, you can then come to a decision that has the most fully considered process, that within our system.
Kraken, where are you? I can see you, you're over there.
The merits of an issue to be duly considered, and simply giving one particular judge, often on the extreme end of the distribution, full say on the matter. So, Mr. Gingrich, Speaker Gingrich, you've mentioned a few possible remedies here. One that caught my attention was the ability of the Chief Justice to establish a procedure as it concerns nationwide injunctions. What would that look like?
Well, thank you. Look, the police justice, the Chief Justice.
Oh my god, my first time seeing Kraken.
Yes, a district judge can render a judgment. But the moment he or she renders an injunction beyond the district, the Supreme Court will immediately intervene suspend the position of the remedy until the Supreme Court renders a decision. If the Supreme Court says you're right, then we have a Supreme Court enforced nationwide injunction. If the Supreme Court says, you're not convinced, then officiate the whole thing, it'll be over. To say, well, there's an appeals process. You're talking about getting rid of criminals. You're talking about defending the country. An appeals process can run so long that the damage has already been done by the time you go through the appeal. And so I think, in some form, if we're going to retain the ability of district judges to issue any injunction, it has to be modified. If we can't get a modification, it has to be abolished.
Thank you very much, and I would encourage the Chief Justice to hopefully be thinking about this from his perspective, and in Congress, we of course also have tools to create the tools, and I think that frankly, that's hopefully perhaps a compromise that both sides could come to, since this will be an issue that arises in future administrations.
I thank the gentleman. And now I'm asking them.
Kraken, you better don't one for me.
Be permitted to participate in today's hearing for the purpose of questioning witness if a member is qualified for that purpose. And without objection so ordered, I now recognize the gentleman from California, Mr. 12.
My
We're about
God.
2+ hours.
I need to wait this long, right?
And as I'm taking stock, we're here because some guy I've never heard of, who might be in Congress, introduced an impeachment resolution. He's not here, hasn't been here for at least the last hour, and every witness here is in agreement that we really shouldn't be impeaching judges. I haven't heard a single colleague on the other side say we should be impeaching. Would the gentleman yield? Not yet. And this guy is just raising his bucks on this issue. It's like a fundraising ploy, but we all are here, like we're in our suits, we're wasting, or we're not dedicating ourselves to other matters because this guy wrote some article. Just seems kind of absurd to me because no one even thinks
I
that's
bet they use
and I
the
dare,
King's
whoever this
Watch.
person is, I hope you would come. I dare him to bring a privilege resolution because we can actually debate this, but it's just a stunt. I promise you, it's a stunt. I will contribute to his campaign if he brings before this committee an impeachment resolution. Now, Speaker, you said some of these judges are pretend presidents. Would the gentleman give 700 district judges that are pretending that they're president? There's a judge, a single judge in a federal courthouse in Amarillo, Texas, where conservatives are form shopping and having cases sent to them. Judge Kazmarek. In 2023, he suspended mifepristone approval. That's a medical abortion pill. Can you direct me, Speaker, to the statement you gave objecting to him doing that? I couldn't find it.
No, I haven't spoken out on this issue until I was invited to come here.
Okay.
And I wrote about it in 2011.
But how
How
about when Judge Kazmarek ruled against ACA protections for LGBTQ individuals in November 2020?
I think the term I have not spoken on this issue until I was invited here was generic. It included every single one of the cases you were asked about. So stipulated in the minutes. I did not comment because I did not comment. And I'm not here to comment on a single case.
How about
I'm going to say that the system is out of whack.
Speaker,
Which, by the way, I wrote about in 2011.
an elected Trump third term, is that constitutional? I think it's funny too.
If the Congress wishes to pass the constitutional amendment and the requisite number of states decide to endorse that amendment, of course he would have the option to run for election. In the absence of that kind of constitutional change, I think that it's impossible.
Thank you. And with that, I'll yield
Thank you so much, and I appreciate the speaker for admitting openly on the record that it is unconstitutional. But the concerns that I have are around the fact that we are sitting here pretending as if
we all are looking out for the Constitution, yet we are coming from completely different angles. So
Or the
let me go to
mythical
the
wagon.
shop.
Oh, so
To be
sick.
clear,
The so
which
sick.
branch of government is responsible for interpreting what is and
It's
what is
easy,
not?
ka don't mind.
Supreme Court, the Article 3 judicial branch has the final word.
So the judiciary is who it is. So it's not the legislature.
You know, I'd say every branch has an obligation to interpret the Constitution. The final word comes from the courts.
Well, from the courts. It's not the former speakers. It's not everyday people. It's not the president. I just wanted to make sure that we understood who it was that was responsible. And what is so frustrating for so many of the American people, the ones that are watching right now and otherwise, and the reason that they're outraged and scared is because what we see right now is a diminishing of all these institutions. Right now, we have a legislative branch that has decided that it intentionally would disregard their duties.
After
They are
this,
not checking the
so
president
join my friends.
whatsoever. The only check that the American people have had thus far has been from the judiciary. And the judiciary is employing this, such as what birthright citizenship is. But one of the things that I want to make sure that I get to, because there are deeper implications if we go down this rabbit hole. Imagine the type of world where the president does whatever he wants to and no one can rein him in. It's a world that right now many people are afraid of. Let me put it this way. If Joe Biden would have done an executive order for abortion, despite what the Supreme Court said, that would have been a problem. Imagine if the state of Colorado kept Trump off the ballot and other states followed suit. That would have been a problem. Or imagine if Jack Smith ignored Eileen Cannon and with the help of an activist judge decided he was going to prosecute the sitting president anyway. The problem that we have right now is that if we continue down this road, then we will not have a rule of law because we have people that are currently serving and they're saying things like, ignore the judge's order. What it means to have law and order in this country is that you follow the order and you go and get no
Yes.
even
I got it.
What the judge did. Thank you. And
Guys, I got it, guys.
You had a question for me, No, there's no time left. I think you're good. You're good at that, but I'll take my own time. I'll recognize myself. And I'm going to note that
Guys, I got it.
Ms. Ocasio-Cortez, or AOC as we know her, filed articles of impeachment on Justice Thomas Alito. Ms. Crockett was one of the co-sponsors along with Mr. Cohen, both members.
I got it.
It does seem interesting that when the shoe is on the other foot, everyone is self-righteous. And I think this is a good example. For the last 3 hours, I have had to listen to one side talking about impeachment as though it was the nature of this hearing. It is not. I keep looking at my friend, the late Henry Hyde, and remember that although...
Got it! Yes, let's go, baby!
He was doing it that time and then never mentioned it again. In fact, he was deliberately able to focus on the hearing today. The hearing of today is really of the court's ability to do its job as intended.
Let's cut
And I'm going to get into a couple of things fairly quickly. Last night, a California judge, Judge Chen, proactively stopped the ending of these temporary protective status.
Okay.
So the very person that you're talking about, who is now
going to
apparently back in his home country of El Salvador, can no longer be sent there because a judge has decided in California to stop an action which was
I'm joining my friend.
Conservatives and liberals on that
I don't know what
and they
name is even
allowed
playing.
that
Like a
development.
Mendoza, the fact is only the Supreme Court speaks for the entire nation, and that is what we are discussing here today. Is the issue before us. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, I'm going to just derive a couple of other quick things. There was an earlier question on Rule 65.
How do you want to play this game? Go tell my friend.
And the unambiguous language of it says that, in fact, at least in some cases, we won't argue over any one of these now approaching 100 cases, there has to be a bond, and yet there have been no bonds. Is that correct?
I have not searched the record in all those cases, so
We have. There hasn't been a bond.
I'll trust you on that.
So Rule 65 is being ignored by these activist judges, and as a result, there's a real question about, in disobedience of those rules, in absence of a bond,
they may in fact not be enforceable as valid, correct?
That may be. I would not say they've been ignored, because if they weren't raised by the government as an issue in the case, then they might have just been overlooked. So
I would trust that from this day forward, they will not be overlooked. You've got enough time. This will be the last round until the recess. You're recognized.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
My God.
Mr. Gingrich, I want to focus on some of your testimony today. You say that a judicial coup d'etat is being implemented by judges of the same political ideology. In another statement, you said that Judge Boasberg has a clear bias against President Trump. Do you know who appointed Judge Boasberg?
I think his first appointment was by George Bush.
Correct. And we've been talking about nationwide injunctions. There's been a lot of discussion about the injunction on the president's birthright citizenship executive order that was enjoined by Judge Kuhnauer. Do you know who appointed Judge Kuhnauer?
No, I don't.
Ronald Reagan. So let's just focus on these two Republican-appointed judges so we can just remove all the allegations of partisan bias.
So we're removing the other name.
So let's focus first on Judge Boasberg's case, which is the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 law that very specifically applies during wartime or if the country is subject to an invasion. Now, you would agree, I assume, as a former Speaker of the House, that it is Congress's duty to declare war.
I think there's also a provision of that which does say for invasion, and I think the average American will tell you they feel that we've been invaded.
Wow, that's
good. So the average, so are we now supposed to say that your assessment of the average American's view determines whether or not we are under invasion by Venezuela? So that's what we're supposed to do.
Oh my God.
Is it, if not the average American, what your testimony is here today is that Donald Trump, because he was elected president, alone should determine whether or not that law applies without any due process. Is that your testimony?
My position is that the Supreme Court should have the opportunity on a nationwide issue to render the remember.
Okay, so let me reclaim my time. So basically what you're saying then is the problem here is that Judge Boasberg pre-certified a class because, of course, it is the exact same question for every single person who was removed to El Salvador. And what happened is that every single one of those people should have to file their own lawsuits. And that each district then judge can rule on. That's the difference, the opposite of a nationwide injunction, right?
Actually, as I've said several times in the last 3 hours, there can be a provision by which the Supreme Court takes up that injunction.
So which is it? Do you oppose nationwide injunctions as a judicial coup d'etat?
No.
Or do you think nationwide injunctions are appropriate in certain circumstances but should have expedited appeal?
I believe that nationwide injunctions by an individual judge is far too much power, and that there can be.
Let's keep on with Judge Boasberg's case, okay? So he issued, and by the way, he did not issue an order on the underlying issue. He temporarily enjoined the president from whisking off people to another country without due process so that the legal issue can be resolved. Now, you say expedited appeal. That opinion, that case was already appealed to the district court, the Court of Appeals for the district court. They've already ruled. And by 2-1, they kept the temporary injunction in. It was a Republican appointee, Judge Henderson, who was one of the two. So I guess I'm confused as to what the problem is with a temporary nationwide injunction so that the issue can be resolved, and if necessary, ultimately by the Supreme Court. It sounds like you agree with me that that is the appropriate process.
The difference is whether or not you believe, one, that time matters.
Oh my God!
Well, this was within a matter of weeks. It's now up before the Supreme Court.
It's very fast.
That's expedited. And I will say, I wholly agree with you. And to my colleague, Mr. Kiley, I would happily work to expedite appeals for nationwide injunctions. I hope
my Republican colleagues would work with us to expedite enforcement of congressional subpoenas. The courts take far too long. I agree with you. But the notion that we do not have due process and that someone should be removed without due process based on false pretenses, which the administration now admits under a petition for habeas corpus, I would add, Mr. Larkin,
so I need to
and
go,
that there's
so
no
bye.
recourse
I will feel you
because their
watching
mistake
the
is
video,
now
so
out of their
bye.
control.
And
I think
welcome
even you, Mr.
for
Gingrich, would agree with me.
thank you for
that
helping
when you
you.
mistakenly accuse someone of
Welcome for
being a
helping you
gang
get
member
to
and you
the
deport
Kraken
them,
and the
then
Syria.
it is incumbent upon
So
you to
bye.
fix that mistake.